The morning started differently. Not in a dramatic, Hollywood kind of way. No thunderstorms or broken mirrors or ominous phone calls. Just quiet. Too quiet even for a weekday. That's probably what made me pay attention first. The kind of quiet that makes you realize something's off before your brain has caught up. She walked into the kitchen around 7:30, barefoot, still towel drying her hair. And she was wearing a shirt. A man's button-up that I'd never seen before. It wasn't mine. And I knew that with a certainty that felt immediate and absolute. Now, I'm not one of those husbands who can't remember what shirt he wore yesterday. I press my own clothes. Every Sunday evening, like clockwork, I iron every shirt I wear for the week, arrange them by color, then by sleeve length. It started as a stress relief thing, turned into a ritual. I know every shirt I own. I know the fabric weight, the collar stiffness, whether it pulls slightly at the back of the neck. I know them all. And this one, I had never touched it. It was light blue, almost pastel, with a slight sheen to the fabric. Not quite silk, not quite cotton. The kind of shirt that screams money or at least effort. Pearl-style buttons, slightly tapered waist. A shirt tailored for someone just a bit slimmer than me. It hung on her the way men's shirts always do on women in movies. Off the shoulder, the hem brushing her thighs. Too big to be hers, too unfamiliar to be mine. "What's that?" I asked as casually as I could. I was standing by the coffee machine, pouring my first cup. My hand froze halfway, and I must have looked more stunned than I wanted to, because she paused for just a second, just long enough for me to catch it. She looked down at herself like she'd only just realized she was wearing something. "Oh, this?" she said, brushing it off. "I thought it was yours. Found it in the laundry." I stared at her, cup still in my hand. "It's not." She offered me a shrug and a crooked smile, like she was trying to play it cool. "Well, it was in your drawer. Maybe you forgot? You've got so many." I didn't forget. I never forget. I could tell you where I bought each shirt and whether I was wearing it when we went to her sister's wedding, or when we had that fight outside the Thai place in Arlington. But I didn't say any of that. Instead, I nodded and took a sip of coffee. Hot, bitter. My stomach turned. The shirt smelled faintly like cologne. Not mine. That part hit me harder than I expected. I'd never noticed how personal scent is until that moment. Mine is woody, cedar-based, something she bought me for our 5th anniversary. This one had a musky, synthetic top note like something a younger guy might wear out to a bar. She went to the fridge like nothing was wrong. Pulled out oat milk. Poured some into her granola. Acting like this was just another morning in our quiet house in Northern Virginia. We'd been married for 8 years. Lived in that house for 5. And yet, in that moment, sitting across from her at our little marble-top kitchen island, I felt like I didn't know her at all. She looked up and caught me staring. "What?" I hesitated. "Just that shirt." She gave a soft laugh. "You're really stuck on this, huh?" "It's not mine." I already said. "I found it in your drawer." I didn't respond. Didn't trust myself to. She pulled her phone closer and started scrolling, thumb moving in slow circles. The screen was tilted just out of my line of sight, something I'd noticed more often lately. Little things, private things, things I used to ignore because I wanted to believe the best in her. "You heading into work soon?" she asked, not looking up. "Yeah," I said slowly. "Usual time. You've got that budget meeting, right?" "Yep." Silence again. The soft crunch of granola. My coffee growing cold. The refrigerator humming louder than usual. Outside, a squirrel darted across the back deck, and for a second I wanted to be anywhere but inside that kitchen. I looked at her, really looked. Hair tied back in a messy bun. Skin flushed from the shower. No makeup, or if she was wearing any, it was so subtle I couldn't tell. She looked good. Beautiful, even. Still the same woman I fell in love with during that rainy college weekend up in Boston. But something in her eyes had changed. Not sad. Not distant. Just blank. Like she was acting. Like she was on stage, playing the part of a wife having breakfast with her husband. She finished eating, stood up, and walked her bowl to the sink. As she leaned forward to rinse it, the shirt rode up slightly, and I caught a glimpse of the hemline and something else. A small stitched monogram on the lower seam, JT. I stared at it. JT. No one in our life had those initials. None of my friends. None of hers. I turned it over in my mind, again and again, trying to convince myself there was some benign explanation. A cousin? A loaner from a boutique? A misdelivered laundry bundle? But even as I tried, I knew I didn't believe any of it. Hey, I said after a moment, you working from home today? She turned off the faucet, wiped her hands on a towel. No. I've got yoga at 9, then meeting the girls for coffee. Yoga. That was new. She'd never been into it before, had actually made fun of it once upon a time. But now she had a full membership at a studio downtown. Expensive one, too. Hot yoga. Releases toxins, she told me last week. She'd started going 3 times a week, religiously. And every time she came home glowing. Sweaty but glowing. Always smiling. Always calm. Right, I said. You still going with Sarah and Jen? She paused for half a breath. Just enough to notice. No, just me today. I nodded, pretending to accept that. We didn't speak much after that. She left a little after 8, tossing the shirt into the laundry basket like it meant nothing. I watched from the living room window as she got into her car, not her usual car, but the smaller sedan we rarely used, and drove off. I didn't go to work that day. Instead, I walked back to the laundry room and pulled the shirt from the basket. Held it up to the light. Still warm. Faintly wrinkled. And unmistakably not mine. JT. Who the hell was JT? I turned it inside out. No laundry tag. No dry cleaner label. Whoever it belonged to, he hadn't had it cleaned professionally. Which meant she'd brought it home, not picked it up somewhere by mistake. My chest tightened. Not with rage. Not even sorrow. Just a sinking sense of knowing. I sat on the edge of the bed, holding the shirt like it might tell me something else. Some hidden truth in the threads. The sheets were still unmade. We'd slept side by side, but I couldn't remember if she'd touched me. Couldn't remember if we'd even said goodnight. I used to think the end of a relationship would come with screaming. Crying. Maybe a slammed door. But sometimes it starts with a quiet kitchen. A borrowed shirt. And the realization that the person you love has already left, they just haven't packed yet. After she left that morning claiming she was off to yoga and then to meet the girls for coffee, I stayed behind. Alone in the kitchen with my cold coffee and a head full of static. I didn't even hear the car pull out of the driveway. I just sat there, staring at the empty chair across from me, heart thudding like a dull bass drum. I couldn't stop thinking about that shirt. The way she looked in it, too casual, too at ease, like she'd worn it before. Like it belonged to her in some twisted new reality I hadn't been invited into. And the monogram, JT? Those 2 letters were branded into my brain now. I kept repeating them under my breath like some kind of incantation. JT, JT, JT? I wasn't ready to jump to conclusions. Not out loud anyway. But something had cracked. Something that had been holding everything together. A dam I didn't even know existed had just started to leak. And so I sat there in silence, rewinding it all. All the signs. All the little things I had explained away, the things I had chosen not to see because I didn't want to believe what they pointed to. It started months ago, now that I think about it. The little shifts in her schedule. The jogs that became longer and more frequent. At first, it made sense. She said running helped her clear her head. Work stress, family stuff, the usual. But she always came back sweaty and satisfied, like something inside her had been reset. And she'd started jogging in the evening, around dusk. Later and later. Sometimes she'd come home after dark, headphones still in, cheeks flushed like she'd been sprinting the last mile. But her location history, when I had randomly checked it once after she came home unusually late, showed her pausing for almost an hour in a parking lot downtown. A gym parking lot. She claimed to hate gyms. Then there was the phone thing. It didn't happen all at once, either. First, she started putting her phone screen down on the table during dinner. I didn't think much of it then. I figured maybe she was just trying to be polite, to stay present. We had talked about screen time before, even joked about how addicted we'd become. But over time, it shifted from polite habit to guarded ritual. She'd keep it within reach at all times. Bathroom breaks, laundry, even when she showered. I once picked it up by mistake, thinking it was mine. The screen lit up and she practically snatched it out of my hands. Said she had a sensitive work email up. I believed her. Why wouldn't I? And now I wondered how many lies had come disguised as something practical. There were the girls' nights that always came without warning. Plans made last minute. People I never met. She never invited me along anymore, not that I ever asked to come. At first, I didn't want to be overbearing. But something about the way she dressed those nights, it didn't match the stories. Tight jeans, heels, makeup like she used to wear when we were still dating. The same perfume she used to reserve for our anniversaries. She'd laugh when I teased her about getting all dressed up. Said the girls like to go to nicer places now. Then she'd add some joke about how they were competing with the younger crowd. Always smooth, always quick, but never convincing, not really. Not anymore. Sometimes I'd hear her whispering in the bathroom. Low tones. Then the shower would turn on mid-conversation, drowning out everything. I'd assumed it was just stress, work pressure. Maybe she needed the steam to decompress. Now I saw it for what it was, a cover-up. An intentional drowning of sound. I should have known then. I think I did deep down. But knowing something and accepting it are two very different things. It's like your gut starts yelling, but your heart throws a blanket over it and tells you to go back to sleep. Then there was her new love for yoga. She hated yoga. Or at least, she used to. Said it was boring, too slow. I remember we tried a couples class once. She made it halfway through before giving up and making jokes about the instructor's whisper voice. That was 2 years ago. Now she was obsessed. She'd bought a mat, matching outfits, a stainless steel water bottle that cost more than my sneakers, and a full membership to a studio with dim lighting and scented towels. When I asked her about it, she said it made her feel grounded. Said it helped her reconnect with herself. I thought maybe it was healthy. Good even. God knows we've been stuck in a routine. But something about how quickly she latched onto it made me wonder. She started attending more than just yoga. There were workshops, deep stretch nights, special classes that went late. One night she didn't get home until almost 11. I asked how yoga had run so long. She said they'd gone out for smoothies after. Smoothies. At 11. That was the night I smelled a different cologne on her, again, not mine. I was half asleep on the couch when she leaned in to kiss me goodnight. And there it was, a sharp chemical scent. It made my nose wrinkle. I asked about it. She said one of the yoga instructors had hugged her goodbye. One of the girl instructors, she clarified, too quickly. I should have gotten up. I should have asked more questions. But instead, I rolled over, told her I loved her, and tried to let it go. I wanted to believe she was just evolving. That's the word she'd used. Evolving. Like we're all supposed to outgrow our habits, our ruts. She said she was trying to become the best version of herself. I just didn't realize the version didn't include me. I stood up from the kitchen stool and started pacing the house. Slow at first, then with more urgency. Like retracing steps would help me understand something that had already happened. I opened the laundry basket again and pulled the shirt back out. JT. I held it up to my face. The cologne was fainter now, but it was still there. I went to the bedroom and opened her closet. Not mine, hers. I started scanning hangers. Dresses I hadn't seen her wear in a year. Heels she swore were uncomfortable. Even a small, black clutch she told me she'd lost months ago, neatly tucked behind a stack of scarves. All there. All waiting, as if they had lives of their own now, away from me. On her vanity, I noticed a small velvet pouch. Not hers. Not branded. I opened it and found a pair of cufflinks, masculine. Silver. Simple, elegant. Definitely not mine. I set them down like they were hot to the touch. I sat on the edge of the bed again. Same spot I sat that morning. This time, the weight in my chest felt heavier. Different. I wasn't angry yet, that would come later. But I was starting to mourn something. A death I hadn't realized had happened. Not of her. Not of me. But of us. There's something uniquely cruel about betrayal when it creeps in slowly. When it doesn't explode, but leaks in drop by drop. By the time you notice, your whole foundation's soaked. Rotten. Unsteady. I didn't leave the house that day. I called in sick. Said I had a stomach thing, and in a way, I did. I felt hollow, nauseous. Like my organs were rearranging themselves to deal with the weight of what I now knew or almost knew. She came home around 2 p.m. I heard the garage door. The soft thud of her car door. The jingle of her keys. Then silence. I stayed upstairs. Listened as she walked in, kicked off her shoes, padded into the kitchen. The fridge opened. Something fizzy cracked. She was humming. Humming. She called out, "Hey babe, you home?" I didn't answer. I just watched her from the stairwell, saw the top of her head moving through the kitchen. Still wearing yoga clothes. Still pretending everything was normal. That was when it hit me. Whatever this was, it had been happening for a while. And she was comfortable in it. Rehearsed. Practiced. She had become someone who could carry another man's scent. Another man's shirt. Into my home and pour herself a soda while humming like it was Sunday morning. The realization wasn't sharp. It was dull, slow, like a rope tightening around my chest. But it was real. And it was just the beginning. I got home early the next evening. No warning. No text. I didn't tell my boss, didn't check the calendar, didn't even make an excuse. I just stood up from my desk around noon, nodded to the guy in the next cubicle, and walked out like I was headed for coffee. But I never came back. I drove straight home, windows down, the late afternoon air slapping my face like it owed me something. I didn't have a plan. I didn't even know why I was doing it. Not exactly. I just had this gut-deep instinct that I needed to be there. That something was happening in my house, in my life, right under my nose, and I'd missed enough of it already. The garage was closed when I pulled up. Her car wasn't in the driveway, but the front door was unlocked. That was the first red flag. She never left the house unlocked. Not in our neighborhood. Not with her obsession about safety. And yet there it was, slightly ajar, like whoever came in wasn't worried about being seen. I pushed the door open gently and stepped inside. Silence. The kind of silence that doesn't feel empty. It feels held, like the air itself is waiting for something. I didn't call out. I didn't say her name. I didn't need to. Something in my chest told me exactly where to go. The kitchen was spotless. The living room, untouched. Shoes by the door. Mail neatly stacked. Could have passed for any ordinary Thursday. But then I saw it, her jacket draped over the arm of the couch. The same one she wore when she said she was headed to a late yoga class. She was here. I moved slowly, deliberately. Each step felt like it echoed too loudly on the hardwood. My hands were cold. My fingers tingled. Up the stairs. One creak halfway up. I paused and held my breath. The bedroom door was mostly shut. Not completely. Just enough to obscure the view. Just enough to make me feel like I was trespassing in my own damn house. I pushed it open. And that's when everything ended. She was on the bed. With him. At first, I didn't recognize him. Not really. Just another man. Shirtless. Lean. Younger than me, maybe mid-30s. His face was twisted in some version of pleasure. His back arched toward her like he belonged there. But then, recognition hit like a slap. The gym. That's where I'd seen him. He was one of the regulars. Always at the squat rack. Always smirking like life was a private joke only he understood. He had offered to spot me once. I declined. Now he was in my house. In my bed. With my wife. They didn't see me at first. The curtains were half drawn. Sunlight streaking across the room in gold lines. There was music playing low, bass-heavy. Something rhythmic. Seductive. And in the corner, near the dresser, was something even worse. A phone. Propped up on a small tripod. Facing the bed. Recording. I froze. Not just from shock, but from something deeper. Like the moment you realize you're not dreaming, and you can't close your eyes to make it go away. She saw me first. A shift in the light must have caught her attention. Her head turned, eyes widened. Her whole body stiffened. "Mark!" she gasped, scrambling, pulling at the sheets. He looked confused, like he'd walked into the wrong room. For a second, he just blinked at me, like I was a problem he hadn't accounted for. Then he reached for his shirt. I didn't yell. I didn't scream. I didn't even move. I just stood there, staring at the two of them. Frozen in time, mouths half open, limbs tangled in something they couldn't untangle fast enough. I took one step back, then another. I turned and walked out of the room, down the stairs, through the living room, and I locked the front door behind me. I stood on the porch for a moment, staring out at the street. The sun was starting to dip. Somewhere down the block, someone's sprinkler had kicked on. The world kept turning. I got into my car and drove away. My hands were shaking so badly I had to grip the steering wheel tighter than I ever had in my life. My foot hovered over the gas for a moment too long at every stop sign. I don't even know how I made it to the hotel. It was the first place I saw with a vacancy sign. A dusty brick building off the highway. I parked around the back and walked in like a ghost. The clerk didn't ask questions. Just handed me a key and nodded like he saw this kind of thing every day. Maybe he did. I sat on the edge of the stiff mattress for an hour, just breathing, not crying, not raging, just existing, trying to make sense of the moment my life split in half. I thought I'd feel something explosive, betrayal, fury, sorrow. But all I felt was clarity. A cold, sharp kind of knowing. Like someone had finally turned on a light in a room I didn't realize had gone dark. She hadn't just cheated. She'd orchestrated it. Filmed it. She had built a whole other life in parallel to mine, and all this time I'd been walking around thinking we were still building one together. I opened my phone and texted her 3 things. I saw enough. We're done. Check the door. Then I attached a single photo I'd taken. Not of them in bed, I couldn't bring myself to do that. But of the tripod. That phone. That little black lens staring down like it knew everything. No reply. I didn't expect one. But a minute later, the delivered mark switched to read. 10 minutes after that, she called. I didn't answer. She called again. And again. I turned my phone off. Later that night, after I'd stared at the ceiling for hours, I turned it back on. Still no voicemail. Just a wall of texts. Long ones. Some pleading. Some apologizing. Some trying to explain. But there was one thing she never did: deny it. Not once. That was all the confirmation I needed. I stayed at the hotel that night and the one after. By the 3rd day, I went home, not to talk, not to fight. Just to take care of the final details. I waited until she was gone. I knew her patterns. I knew her fake yoga schedule. I walked in with a roll of boxes and started clearing out every trace of her. Clothes, makeup, shoes, notebooks, keepsakes. Every gift I'd ever given her. Every photo she'd framed. I didn't break anything. Didn't burn it. Just packed it neatly. Labeled it. Taped it shut. By the time she got home, her life was stacked in cardboard on the front porch. The locks had already been changed. She stood there for a long time, staring at the boxes. I watched from the upstairs window, hidden behind the curtain. She didn't knock. Just stood there. Crying, maybe? I couldn't tell. I didn't want to. Eventually, she left. I sent her one last message, a file link. It contained *TS. Footage. A letter, concise, emotionless, outlining why I was done. She never responded to that either. But she didn't have to. By then, everything I needed to know had already been recorded, not just on her phone, but in her face the moment she saw me. And the moment I walked away. The thing people never tell you about heartbreak is how quiet it is. No screaming. No throwing things. No dramatic confrontations or shattered picture frames. At least, not in my case. Just silence. Dense and thick, like fog pressing down on everything. It doesn't explode. It settles. And then it lives in you. That morning, after the incident, after the boxes, after the front door had clicked shut and she walked away with nothing but her car keys and whatever was in her purse, I sat on the living room floor, legs crossed, back against the couch, and just breathed. There was no plan yet. Just impulse. And the first one was simple: I needed to disappear from her life before she even figured out how to ask me to stay in it. I didn't want to scream. I didn't want to hear her excuses or her half-hearted tears. I didn't want to engage in a blame game I knew I'd already won. That's not what this was about. This was about drawing a hard, black line between before and after. So that day, I made a list. Not a list of everything she did, I already knew all that. No, this list was for me, a checklist for my exit. Documents. Bank accounts. Essentials. Locks. Digital security. Closure, my version, not hers. I started with the most basic, the legal stuff. Birth certificate, passport, social security card, all filed in the safe in the hall closet. I grabbed every piece of paper that had my name on it and threw them into a manila folder. Same with the title to the car, the property deed, the insurance papers. I didn't trust her to accidentally lose anything. Then came the finances. I logged into our shared bank account, the one we used for bills, groceries, everyday stuff. I was the one who set it up, so I still had full access. I transferred my half into a new solo account I'd opened that morning at a local credit union. Quick. Secure. No ties to her. She texted me while I was at the bank. Can we talk? I didn't respond. Later, when I got back to the house, I found another message. Please. Just 5 minutes. I don't know what to do. But that wasn't true. She knew what to do when she set up that camera. When she let that man, JT, I assumed, inside our house. Our bed. She made all the choices. All I was doing now was living in their consequences. By the afternoon, I was fully packed. Not just for a night, for good. Clothes, toiletries, chargers, my laptop, hard drives, and the leather journal she gave me for our first anniversary. I didn't even open it. Just stuffed it in my bag and zipped it shut. I booked a long-term suite at a downtown hotel. One with a kitchen and blackout curtains and soundproofed walls. The kind of place where people disappear for months at a time while restructuring their lives, as the website put it. When I dropped off my bags, the front desk clerk smiled politely. Asked if I was staying for work or vacation. I said neither. He didn't press. By the time I returned home that evening to my house, she was there. Sitting on the steps of the porch next to the boxes I'd left for her. Legs pulled up to her chest, face blotchy, hair tied up like she hadn't bothered looking in the mirror. She stood when she saw me. "Mark, please." I didn't break stride. I walked up to the porch, unlocked the front door, and held it open. "Take your things," I said, voice low. "Don't talk to me. Can I just?" "No." Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. She stepped inside, started gathering the boxes. She wasn't even crying anymore. Just hollow. Her eyes darted toward the stairs, toward the hallway, as if she expected me to offer her some olive branch. I didn't. She took 3 trips to her car. On the last one, she paused at the door. "I'm sorry," she whispered. I didn't answer. And that silence? It said everything. When she was gone, I changed the locks again. All of them. Front, back, side, garage, keypad. I wiped every smart home device she had access to: cameras, thermostats, voice assistants. Factory reset. Gone. She didn't get to peek into my life anymore. Not digitally. Not emotionally. Not in any way. That night, alone in the house for the first time in years, I poured myself a drink and sat on the back deck. The air was cool and the neighborhood was quiet except for the occasional bark of a dog or the hum of a car in the distance. I stared up at the sky and waited to feel something. But I didn't feel sad. Or angry. Or vindicated. I felt relieved. Like I had just set down a weight I didn't realize I'd been carrying. She didn't contact me for 2 days. Then, late on a Sunday, I got another text. "This isn't how we end. Please. We need to talk." Followed by, "We can work it out. We always do." And then, finally, "I still love you." I stared at that one the longest. I thought about all the ways I could respond. About how easy it would be to fall back into old habits, to try to patch a wound that was still gushing. But I didn't reply. I never would. Instead, I took *TS. Every message. Every photo. The footage she had accidentally left on her own cloud backup. Yes, I'd found it. The raw video file. A 22-minute recording that began with her fixing the tripod and ended with her laughing as she shut the phone off. She never deleted it. I downloaded it. Saved it. Then backed it up to 3 separate locations, encrypted, off-site, one of them completely offline. Not for revenge. Not yet. For protection. For leverage. Because I wasn't just planning on leaving her. I was planning on ending the version of me who ever believed she was someone I could trust. I met with a lawyer the next morning. He was recommended by a friend, a quiet, older guy with thick glasses and a face that didn't flinch no matter what I told him. He listened. Took notes. Then leaned back in his chair and said, "You have options?" "I don't want drama," I told him. "Good," he said. "You'll want precision instead." We started preparing. Divorce proceedings would begin the following week. But in the meantime, he walked me through something else, something I hadn't known I could pursue: a civil claim. Alienation of affection. Virginia was one of the few states where that still existed, where you could file a lawsuit against the third party for willfully interfering in a marriage. And the evidence? I had more than enough. My lawyer smiled when I handed him the USB stick. "This is airtight," he said. And in that moment, I realized what she had done wasn't just a betrayal of love, it was a legal liability. A career-ending one for the man in the video. JT. He worked in our county. Part of a health and wellness initiative at the local gym, the one funded by city contracts. There were morals clauses, public reputation concerns. I knew enough to know his employer would not be pleased. The lawsuit was drafted by Friday. By Monday, it was filed. And by Wednesday, he was served. At work. In front of coworkers. I heard from a friend who worked in local government that it didn't go over well. Apparently, HR saw the footage. Not just stills, the video. From the tripod. From her phone. The moment she laughed. The moment he said her name. The moment my marriage, the shell of it, collapsed in real time with 1080p clarity. When I got the news that he'd been suspended pending internal review, I didn't feel joy. I felt, still, like the ocean after a storm. She texted again that night. "You're hurting him." "Why?" I stared at the message, blinking. Then I typed one sentence. "Because he knew what he was doing. And so did you." And I blocked her. Not just her number, her email, her social media, her mutual friends. I went dark. For the first time in years. She had no idea where I was, what I was thinking, who I was becoming. And that, more than anything, felt like freedom. The strange thing about betrayal is that once the emotional dust starts to settle, what's left isn't sadness. It's clarity. Cold, clinical, razor-sharp clarity. And in that state of mind, I didn't want therapy. I didn't want closure. I wanted accountability, consequences, not through revenge, not through violence, through precision, through the system, through the law. I remember sitting in the lawyer's office, legs crossed, hands steady, and feeling more in control than I had in months, maybe years. "So," he said, leaning forward, "do you want the fast way or the right way?" I looked him straight in the eye. "I want the permanent way." He nodded like he already knew that would be my answer. By then, the paperwork was already in motion for the divorce. No fault on the surface, but I was advised to document everything. And I mean everything. He told me the courts didn't need emotional arguments. They needed patterns, dates, evidence. Thanks to the carelessness of her little home video session, I had more than that. I had irrefutable proof of the affair. The footage, taken with her phone and saved to her cloud, was time-stamped and unedited. I had already made 3 offline copies. I burned 2 discs, one for the lawyer and one for the safe deposit box. Then I uploaded a copy to a secure, encrypted drive with legal access rights shared to my attorney. But it didn't stop there. He asked if I knew the man's full name. I did. Justin Thomas, JT. The same guy from the gym, the same initials stitched onto that damn shirt. And as it turned out, Justin wasn't just a trainer. He was also under contract with the city to lead wellness programs for local high schools. Public money. Meaning, and this is where it got interesting, he was technically a public contractor. That made him eligible for scrutiny under conduct unbecoming clauses in his agreement. If it could be shown that his behavior outside of work had a demonstrable impact on his public role, there was ground for disciplinary action. And that was before we even touched the alienation of affection suit. See, Virginia is one of only a handful of states that still allow it, suing the third party for willfully interfering in a marriage. The idea is old-fashioned, maybe even controversial, but the law was on my side. And so was the evidence. Emails, texts, footage. The text threads were recovered from her old phone backup, and though most were boring, a few stood out. One in particular where he referred to me as the placeholder. That one hit like a freight train. She had replied with a laughing emoji and a single word, "Stop." Not exactly resistance. In the video, he called her his girl, and she didn't correct him. It was enough. The suit was filed quietly but firmly. My attorney sent a formal notice to Justin's employer the same day we served him. He was notified by HR 2 days later that the city had opened a conduct investigation. He went on leave the day after that. I didn't care about his job. I really didn't. But I cared that he understood the weight of what he helped destroy. You don't sneak into a man's home, lie in his bed, touch his wife, and walk away clean. Not anymore. Meanwhile, her life began to fray. It started with whispers. I hadn't told anyone, not family, not friends, but these things have a way of leaking. Maybe it was the process server. Maybe it was someone at his job. Maybe it was her own guilt. I don't know. But suddenly people were stepping back. Her sister stopped replying to her texts. A mutual friend of ours, one I hadn't spoken to in weeks, reached out to say, "I'm so sorry, man. I had no idea." She must have known something was shifting, because she tried reaching out again. Emails this time. Long ones. The first one was nearly 2,000 words. No structure. Just emotional flailing. "I don't know what I was thinking. You didn't deserve any of this. I was in a dark place. He didn't mean anything." That last one made me laugh. Out loud. Alone in a hotel room. He didn't mean anything. Then why did you press record? I didn't respond. Not to the first email. Not to the next 5. The 7th one came with an attachment. A photo of us from our honeymoon, blurry from the wind, both of us smiling. Her caption, "Don't you miss this?" I did miss it, but I missed the version of her I thought existed. The version that didn't invite a stranger into our bed and stare into a lens while she did it. The real her, the version that remained, I didn't miss at all. My attorney advised me to keep all the emails. So I did. Every last one. In one of them, she begged me to talk. She said she'd go to therapy. She said she'd quit yoga. She said she'd never speak to Justin again. But it was all reactive. All performative. She wasn't trying to rebuild our marriage. She was trying to rescue herself from the wreckage she caused. It was too late for that. By week 3, the consequences began to cascade. Her job, a local marketing firm, received an anonymous email. Someone sent the video, or part of it. I'll never know who, and it wasn't me. I had too much to lose. But it spread. She was put on indefinite leave while HR investigated the nature of the content. Then came the fallout with her family. Her parents, conservative, reputation-focused, deeply religious, called me directly. Her mom sobbed over the phone. "I didn't raise her to be this way," she whispered. "Mark, I'm so sorry. I didn't know what to say." I told her I appreciated the call. A few days later, her dad called to ask if I'd be willing to forgive her. That was the only call I hung up on. Some bridges don't burn by accident. Some you light yourself. The court proceedings moved quickly, thanks to the evidence and the airtight timeline my lawyer laid out. We filed for divorce with fault established through adultery. She didn't contest it. Couldn't. Her lawyer asked for mediation instead of trial. I agreed, not out of kindness but to keep control. At mediation, she looked smaller than I remembered. Thin. Pale. Eyes swollen. She didn't speak much, let her lawyer do most of the talking. She avoided eye contact. Wore black. I didn't flinch. We didn't shake hands. I walked out of that room with 70% of our shared assets, sole ownership of the house, and no spousal support owed. Her lawyer asked if I was open to one final meeting between the two of us. No lawyers, no documents. Just closure. I said no. And then I changed all my phone numbers. I moved out of the hotel the next week and into a temporary apartment across the city. One with empty walls and new paint. No photos. No framed quotes. No reminders. Just space. Space to breathe. Space to become someone else. Someone smarter. Someone sharper. Someone who trusted instincts more than words. People say that healing starts with forgiveness. I disagree. I think it starts with recognition. Seeing the truth for what it is and refusing to turn away. I saw her for what she was. I saw him for what he did. And I saw myself not as a victim, but as someone who finally remembered what self-respect feels like. And that was enough. After the legal dust settled, her life began to cave in. First came the HR ruling, dismissal for conduct violating company policy. Her reputation tanked. Then her family stopped shielding her. Her parents wouldn't take her calls. Friends she used to confide in distanced themselves. No one wanted to be caught in the fallout. I didn't gloat. I didn't post online. I just watched from a distance, quiet and unmoved. Meanwhile, I rebuilt. I moved to another city, started a small export business, changed my entire routine. I cut ties with everyone connected to her. No mutual friends. No shared playlists. I was done living in her shadow. The silence she left behind wasn't sad. It was liberating. I don't believe in words anymore. I believe in behavior. Promises fade. Patterns stay. When she finally messaged to say, "I think I'm ready to talk," I didn't even respond. She wasn't coming back to fix things, only to soften the landing. But I'd already landed. She freed me the moment she thought she was ending me. Now I live simply. I trust few. I love carefully. And I sleep well. Because in her betrayal, I didn't lose myself. I found him. And I like the man who walked out of that house more than the one who stayed inside it.